just the breaking news here. We've just learned from Wall Street Journal that Iran has informed the mediators that it will only attend the meeting is in Islamabad in Pakistan if a ceasefire is guaranteed for Lebanon.
Yeah.
I think the thing with Lebanon is getting serious. And what do you make of it, and how do you see the situation right now? Because it's crucial, it's fragile. We know that ceasefire is just in the initial moments, initial hours of ceasefire. How do you see the time as time goes by and the management on the two sides?
No, as I said, the United States is going to have to step up and bring Israel to heel, or else there is no ceasefire. And Donald Trump has no choice. He's not playing games here. He doesn't have any cards to play. Donald Trump has to bring Israel to heel, or else this war continues. And now, Iran will have an even more higher moral ground to say we wanted peace, but Israel was committing genocide against the Lebanese, and we said that has to be part of it. The United States refuses to cooperate. Squeeze the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, it's getting serious, but I honestly believe that the United States isn't going to sacrifice Donald Trump's political legacy because of Israel's ambitions in Lebanon. Again, you can't declare yourself a victor unless you defeat the enemy. Israel is trying to pretend that they have all the cards in Lebanon. They're losing. They're not winning. They're resorting to, again, what they always do is to punish the people of Lebanon collectively. That can't be allowed to stand. So I think the United States is going to intervene and say, no, this is part of the ceasefire as well.
I think, Scott, when you talk about the United States sitting with Iran and with China, I would argue with Russia as well. There has to be some sort of big agenda on the part of Donald Trump to go in that direction. Do you see that happening? Do you see? Because after all, the security of the Middle East, I would say right now, is based on what Iranian decision in the Strait of Hormuz. I think that the reality is totally understood on the part of the Trump administration. How is that going to play out for the region and the way the cooperation between the two countries, Iran and the United States?
I mean, there's going to have to be, first of all, the long-term objective, of course, is normalization of relations. That would be the objective. I don't see that happening overnight. I don't see embassies opening up on each other's soil at this point in time. You see, through BRICS, through China, through Russia, meetings can be had where Iranian representation and American representation are at the same meeting. Maybe they can meet off on the side and begin a dialogue, begin a discussion. But you need trust to be built. You need this ceasefire to hold. You need peace to break out. And that has to happen. And then the Iranians have to see the benefit of this. It's all just words until the money rolls in and Iran starts to deliver on its promise to its people. So I don't know. Is the internet okay?
Yeah, I'm here, Scott. The internet is back. Yeah.
So peace isn't going to break out instantly between the United States and Iran, but Iran's going to have to see the benefits of this proposal, and that has to happen pretty quick. And Trump has to survive politically. I mean, again, Trump's not going to commit suicide on behalf of anybody. And so I do think you're going to see both sides committed to making this work. And they will come up with agreement. Look, Trump's dealing with a whole new world here. Prior to this, we thought we could hold the Strait of Hormuz, which means we thought that we could hold the Strait of Malacca, which means we thought we could control the South China Sea, shipping lanes. We can control nothing. The new reality is we control nothing, absolutely nothing. We couldn't get the Strait of Hormuz. How do we think we're going to stop China from shutting down the South China Sea in any big crisis? This changes everything. Trump has to understand that the Pete Hegseth can't deliver on any of his promises, none of his promises, which means, you go to the National Security Strategy document of November 2025 when we're talking about military overmatch with China. That's our approach in the Pacific. That's done. There's no such thing as military overmatch. What we need to hope for is that we have to stop militarizing these conflicts, and we have to start dealing with the Chinese economically and diplomatically. And I think you're going to see this is going to be the new Donald Trump, and the same thing with Russia. We desperately need, and it's not like, okay, the Strait of Hormuz is open, and therefore we're going to in Russia again. The damage that has been done is going to last, many months, maybe years, and we need Russian energy on the market. Plus, the world is just tired of American sanctions. They're just tired of it, and so I think Trump has to enter into a whole new world of relationships, and these relationships will be part of the security guarantees that Iran has. Once you demilitarize the American mechanism of interfacing with the world, that changes everything. And I think one of the important aspects of the Iranian victory here is that it puts Trump on notice that this military machine that Pete Hegseth has been promoting doesn't provide any solutions. It only creates problems. That doesn't mean that America gives up on its military, but it means that maybe we start putting more effort into diplomacy.
I think that's related to the bases, American bases in the Middle East. And how do you see the policies of the Trump administration with the bases in the Middle East? Are they going to get back? Are they, because that's part of the deal that Iran is asking for. And I don't see, to be honest, so far, what was the use of these bases in this war? One of the most important part of, if the United States, for such a long time, they've been using these bases as a security guarantee for the countries, but it didn't work out after all.
I mean, the bases were about projecting American military power into the region so that we could control the oil, control the energy, contain Iran, initially to contain Iraq, and then to defeat ISIS and all this. I think you're going to see a lot of victory being declared. I think the United States is going to say we have the ISIS problem under control. We can turn Iraq over to the Iraqis, and we can get out of Iraq. We don't want to admit that we were driven out of Iraq. What is the purpose of Al Udeid Air Base? There's no reason to have an Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, even if the Qataris were willing to let us back in, which apparently they're not. There's no purpose for that. We don't need it. So we can say peace is broken out. This peace deal with Iran, I know people, I just wish I could go back in time and go into the comments where people say stupid things. Donald Trump is going to spend this as one of the greatest peacemaking accomplishments of his career. That this war, because he has to spin it this way, this war broke all existing paradigms. Prior to this war, you couldn't even begin to think about peace because Israel, Iran, they were always, we couldn't resolve the Lebanon thing. We couldn't do this. We couldn't that. And America had to be there. But we don't want to be there. We're not the world's policemen. So we needed this war to break the paradigm, to redefine relations in the Gulf. And now that we've done that, we will be there economically. We will lead economically. But we don't need to have our military there. There's peace. So there's no need for the American peacemaker. And our boys and girls are coming home. I'm Donald Trump, Nobel Peace Prize, and I'm the greatest man that ever walked the face of the earth. This is the kind of stuff we're going to be sold. And in some ways, let's be honest. This war, you can't, war is an illegal war of aggression. But if the end result of this is peace and Iran selling oil and energy without sanctions, Israel no longer threatening Iran on a daily basis, Lebanon living in peace, Gaza, maybe the Palestinian state. If all of this comes from this, let Donald Trump sell it any way he wants to. Look, he's going to be out of power in 2 years anyways. He's not hanging around forever. But we don't always have to look for the bad in things. I'm not saying that Donald Trump is good. I'm not. I don't support what he's doing. I'm just saying that because of Iran, because of the sacrifice of the Iranian people, because of the sacrifice of the Lebanese people, the sacrifice of Hezbollah, the sacrifice of the Palestinian people, we're in a situation today where the United States, militarism is no longer welcome in the Middle East, and the United States will leave. And that's the reality of it. Will we leave totally? I don't know. I think it'll be phased, but I don't think we're coming back to Qatar. Um, I think the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain is history. You know, there's not going to be a Fifth Fleet. Maybe a Coast Guard detachment that helps with the, rescuing drowned sailors in the Strait of Hormuz, together with the Iranian Navy and the Americans and Iranians working together in peace and harmony. Who knows? But we're not going to have the need for the military buildup in Kuwait. We can bring all those people home. The same thing with Abu Dhabi. We don't need the bases that we have there. Saudi Arabia, we might retain some sort of residual logistics capability, but eventually that will be withdrawn too. This is one of the greatest victories the Iranians could ever hope for. It's just important that at this juncture, don't oversell it as a victory. Just let it happen. Sometimes the best thing to do is just let it happen, and let Trump just. Who cares how he spins it? Do the Iranians care about American domestic politics? Let Donald Trump play stupid domestic American politics games. As long as the troops leave, who cares how he spends it? Who cares?
Scott, how do you see Dubai? How do you see UAE in that scenario that you just mentioned?
Depends on how they want to play this. They're out of whack because Iran's retaining control of the Strait of Hormuz, and that puts them in a delicate situation. They're going to talk about a pipeline and all this stuff, but the bottom line is it means Iran is the dominant player in the region, and Oman becomes the critical partner, not the UAE. The UAE blew this. They could have been the critical partner. They could have been a partner for peace, but they weren't. They were a partner for war. The other thing this does is it's going to, I think, even deepen the divide between the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia as well. So they're in trouble. I think they're in a lot of trouble. Oh, there goes the.
Yeah. They had.
Okay,
Scott, can you hear? Yeah, you're back. Yeah. They had this division, Scott. They had this division in Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and UAE. I think that is happening right now as well. And
division
I don't
there
see UAE surviving
throughout the region. They had it in Sudan. They have it in the Red Sea. The United Arab Emirates is trying to go in and grab ports to compete with the Saudi influence. I think the UAE is lost that status, and they're going to have to focus on survival now, literally survival. How to keep investments in, how to keep financial centers interested in Dubai. Look, Iran and BRICS. Again, I can't predict the future, but maybe Iran builds a new capital, and maybe that capital becomes a financial hub for the Eurasian Economic Union in Central Asia, and maybe Iran starts attracting the kind of foreign investments that Dubai had been seeking to attract, because Iran's is a better player for that. And I just see that Iran is going to be competing with the United Arab Emirates on a lot of fronts, and they'll have far more influence. The UAE blew it. They tried to call themselves the Sparta of the Middle East. They became a very militaristic, nation. They were seeking to challenge Saudi Arabia for preeminence, and it's collapsing around them. How far the collapse will go, I don't know. But I honestly think that the ruling family has to start thinking about its own survival. That this thing could spin out of control to the point where, people turn on them and they find themselves fleeing. And they're not going to be fleeing to Riyadh. So where are they going to go? That's a good question. Maybe the Iranians will take them in. Who knows?
Scott, I think the policies of Israel is basically must be dependent on the capabilities of Israel today. in terms of defending themselves, in terms of their interceptors, radars. We know that Iran basically destroyed most of these radars in Israel, not outside of Israel. I'm not talking about GCC countries. So do they really want to stay in this fight, to continue this war? Because look at this photo that we've seen. One of these interceptors that Israel is using for David Sling, and it shows the production of this missile was in 2026. And this is the reality. I think one of the main reasons that Donald Trump doesn't see a military solution to what's going on, if he literally believes that.
Israel's in trouble. I mean, that interceptor you show, I think, was a David Sling interceptor, but it had been adapted for use in in an arrow system because they're out of arrow missiles, and so they don't have, Israel's in trouble. They're deep trouble. They have a very strong military. They still have the ability to launch airstrikes not only against Lebanon but against Iran. They've proven that capability. But that's all they have. Economically, they're collapsed. There is no economy for them right now. How do they? No one's talking about reconstruction. The reconstruction cost. Where's that money going to come from? Is the American taxpayer going to pay for that? No. Is the the Chinese going to come in and pay for that? No. Who's going to pay for that? Israel's in deep, deep trouble right now, and they have a huge political right now. Netanyahu versus the opposition. I think Israel's going to have to downsize and become a more responsible player, focused on preserving what they have as opposed to try and create something they don't have, such as Greater Israel.
I think the doubts right now is the United States gonna negotiate in a good faith, or they're gonna make some sort of Minsk II agreement, if you remember, between Russia, Germany, and France on what was happening during those days in Ukraine. Is there anything to be understood about Minsk II? Do you see the capability of this administration to understand what is at stake for them, and what is the history behind these sort of fake negotiations? Because I don't see that happen. I don't see that helping anything, advancing anything in the Middle East and helping the issue of Middle East.
Sadly, you're right on that aspect of it, but sometimes you get convergence of things. This administration is about preserving this administration, plain and simple, and therefore it's now in its interest to have stability in the Middle East, not fake stability, because again they have to understand that if you play stupid games, this thing could unravel in the summer, and that's it. That's the end of Trump. If this thing unravels in the summer, if we get war breaking out all over again, it's Donald Trump's legacy. It's finished. And so they will have to bring in people who are experts. The people that promoted this war aren't going to be promoting the peace. They're going to have to bring in people who understand Iran and and understand things in a more comprehensive fashion. There's some potential here. Again, I'm going to get your audience mad, but I don't care because I know what I'm talking about. This board of peace is a joke. We know it's a joke. We know it's a Donald Trump ego game, but sometimes jokes can be useful. Look at the composition of the board of peace. Look at the people that did the buy-in. They're all regional actors, and they were originally brought in to manufacture some sort of solution for Gaza. But these are the same actors that would have to play a role in the Persian Gulf. Same actors. There's potential here. And again, Donald Trump has created something. His ego is on the line. But if he can take the board of peace and get it and listen to the people in this, not the Kutshners and not the Americans, they're just political actors, but listen to the players from the Gulf Arab states now who will have to be committed to this peace. because it's in their best interest to have a peace. You can use this board of peace to engage in this larger dynamic of peace and stability. And this would be to the benefit of Donald Trump. See, now you have Donald Trump doing something that's to his political benefit, and also something that actually must take into account the history, the cultures, the realities, and not by having a Jared Kushner or a Steve Witkoff be as your filter, but having the actual players, the heads of state, the prime ministers, the people that were standing with him on that platform when he declared the Board of Peace. Now get them to come together and buy into this. There's potential here. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It doesn't mean Donald Trump has the skill set necessary to pull this off, but there's the potential for something good to happen here.
Yeah. How do you see Iraq? Iraq was something different, Scott. Before this war happening, we were talking about Hezbollah in Lebanon. We were talking about the Yemenis, but nobody was talking about the resistance in Iraq. That was whole, the new factor in this war. And how do you find Iraq as time goes by? We know that these countries, NATO countries, they withdrew their troops from Iraq. Right now, Iraq is a totally different, sort of phenomenon, in my opinion. And how do you see that?
You can't sustain Iraq without the overall infrastructure. The military installations that were in the region. Al Udeid Air Base, served as the command and control hub for projecting air power over Iraq. Kuwait was the logistics base, to sustain that. We're losing all this. There's no reason for us to be in Iraq. It was a legacy mission. We get out of Iraq. I mean, I think that's what's going to happen. It's unsustainable. And I think we have to accept the fact that, Iran is going to have significant political influence in the future of Iraq. Iran's smart enough to know that they don't want to alienate the Sunni. Solving the Kurdish issue is, it's going to chance to work together. But the Kurds have once again destroyed themselves by siding with the United States. But I think you're going to see that Iraq is going to purge itself of the American influence. But the other thing you have to remember is that there's a lot of foreign investment in Iraqi oil. Iraq doesn't want to lose that foreign investment. So, I think that you're going to see a much more stable Iraq. I don't think ISIS is going to resurrect its head. And I just see the United States leaving Iraq. There's no reason for us to be there. And we'll leave Syria as well.
I would say if J.D. Vance tries to do something with the case of Iran, then with the case of Ukraine, he would definitely have a chance of winning 2028, Scott. And you remember I went to Russia, and what I talked about before going to Russia, the grand deal, the grand bargain with Russia. I think this is happening. I think it's happening as we speak. And this, again, all the Trump haters out there, Scott, you're defending Donald Trump. No, I'm not. I'm just talking real, guys, reality. Donald Trump, could work with it's in the interest of Russia to have stability, bring it into that conflict. Russia doesn't want this war to go on forever. Donald Trump needs this war to wind down this summer. He needs to be able to say, I brought peace to Ukraine. I brought peace to the Middle East. That's the only way he escapes from this. And I see that happening. I see that happening, in spades. So let's see what happens. It doesn't mean that I'm thrilled about Donald Trump and I'm not promoting him. I despise the man, but I also believe that peace is better than war. And I don't want to bring down Donald Trump at the expense of millions of people who live in the Middle East and live in Europe who are suffering because of these endless wars. If part of making Donald Trump feel that he's in a better position come November means that peace breaks out in the Middle East and peace breaks out in Ukraine, I'm all for it. Yeah. Before wrapping up, Scott, I think the issue of NATO is important right now. How do you see? We had the war in Ukraine. We had the war. We have the war in the Middle East, and as we talk, and what is the outcome of these two wars for the future of NATO?
We can whistle taps all day. It's over. NATO's finished. It's gone. Goodbye. До свидания. Adios. Vea con Dios. Auf Wiedersehen. There's no mission for NATO. It doesn't have a mission. It exists to do nothing. Russia is not a threat. They talk about, but they can't. Europe now has to look at its own survival, economic survival, energy survival. And so it's going to have to turn to Russian energy. They can't. America's going to walk away. NATO failed the litmus test. Strait of Hormuz test, failed it, and there's resentment right now. Look, Trump needs to blame people. I think Pete Hegseth is history. I don't think he survives the summer. I think some other people may go as well. And I think NATO gets thrown under the bus. We whistled and our dog didn't show up. So we ain't going to keep feeding the dog. It's over for NATO. There's no reason for it to exist. What's interesting is the demise of NATO now has Europe talking about a European, the role of the EU, that the EU now should take over some sort of military alliance. And, the Russians are like, well, you just made it pretty easy for us, because Russia in the past had said, it's NATO expansion we oppose, but we don't oppose you joining the EU. Now Russia is able to say, we don't support you joining the EU as well. That, for instance, with Ukraine, Ukraine was saying, well, we're going to join the EU, even though the EU said, no, you're not. But now Russia can say, no, you're not. I mean, this just simplifies what a peace deal will eventually look like with Ukraine, which is complete and total abdication to Russia's demands. There will be some spin, but what is the peace deal that's going to happen in the Middle East? A complete and total abdication to Iranian demands, with some modifications, some adaptations, but Iran gets what it wants. Russia is going to get what it wants. And Europe is going to be, where it should be. When you pick the wrong side and you do everything, there are consequences for actions.